They told me to smile at my sister's wedding, then left me at a gas station 2 states away. Why? Because my son died, and his name was no longer convenient for their picture-perfect family. If you've ever been treated like a ghost in your own bloodline, this story is for you. Subscribe for more true stories they never want told. My name is Alyssa Carter, and I used to think I was just the quiet one in the family. The artistic one. The one who didn't cause trouble. But somewhere along the way that label twisted into something else. Something colder. I became the forgotten one. The inconvenient one. The shadow they never bothered to crop out of the family photos because I was barely visible in the first place. I'm 34 years old, I live alone in Seattle, and I teach art to 3rd graders who think glue sticks are edible and that shading means smearing graphite with your fingers until your hands look like crime scenes. It's a modest life. Not glamorous. Not enviable. But it was mine. Until I lost the only person who ever looked at me like I was someone worth keeping. His name was Leo. My son. He died 3 years ago in what the police called an unfortunate accident. One moment he was crossing the street, chasing the paper airplane we folded together that morning. The next he was gone. A blur of headlights. A screech. A silence so loud it still lives in my bones. They said they couldn't identify the driver. They said these things happen. They said I should find a way to move on. But how do you move on from a child who used to sleep with his hand tangled in your hair? From a boy who called you mommy, like it was the most sacred word in the world? You don't. You just learn to carry the weight without letting it drag you under, at least not in public. My father, Tom Carter, never said much after Leo died. He came to the funeral, stood stiff at the edge of the crowd, shook a few hands and left early. My stepmother, Barbara, didn't even try to pretend. She didn't come. She sent flowers, cheap ones. I remember because they smelled like old soap and guilt. Savannah, my younger half-sister, showed up wearing white. White at a funeral. She told me it was to symbolize peace. I told her to leave and she did without looking back. Since then we've spoken only through holiday cards and the occasional forwarded family update. You know the kind. Barbara had surgery on her knee, Savannah just got promoted again, Tom's been golfing every Tuesday. There's never a sentence about me. Never a word about Leo. It's like we both died that day. So when I received an invitation to Savannah's wedding last month, I thought it was a mistake. A sick joke maybe. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, with gold lettering that screamed money and pride. Inside was a note. We would love for you to attend Savannah and Ethan's wedding in Napa Valley. Please RSVP by May 1st. Travel accommodations will be provided, but we ask that you come alone, keep things simple and avoid bringing up the past. It's a happy occasion after all. They didn't say Leo's name. They never do. I almost threw the invitation in the trash. But something stopped me. Not out of love or obligation. Not because I wanted to see Savannah in a designer gown pretending she was the center of a perfect world. I said yes because I wanted to look my father in the eyes and ask one question. Why did my son's life mean so little to you? I packed light. One bag. Black dress. No makeup. I wasn't going there to impress anyone. 2 days later Tom called. We're leaving Friday morning. Early. We'll swing by and pick you up. Swing by. Like I was luggage. Still, I waited outside my apartment at 6:45 a.m. with a travel mug of coffee and a quiet storm in my chest. I had no idea that by sunset, I'd be standing in the parking lot of a gas station, abandoned by my own blood. And I hadn't even asked my question yet. We were somewhere outside Medford when the air in the SUV started to feel too tight. Barbara sat in the front passenger seat, adjusting the air vents as if the Oregon heat offended her personally. Savannah was curled up beside me in the back row, scrolling through Instagram like we hadn't been silent for the past hour. Dad drove like he always did. Too fast when he was angry, too slow when he was pretending nothing was wrong. It was 9:12 a.m. The car smelled like lavender hand lotion and something artificial like manufactured politeness. I tried to speak once. So, who's all going to the rehearsal dinner? No one answered. Barbara turned up the radio. Savannah pretended she hadn't heard me. I looked out the window at the blur of trees and highway signs and tried not to count the miles between me and Leo's grave. By the time we pulled into the gas station off I-5, I felt like I was being slowly erased. 15-minute break, Dad said without looking at me. Savannah followed Barbara into the mini-mart. I stayed back a moment, letting the car door shut behind me. The sun hit the asphalt hard, making everything shimmer like it was unreal. I walked into the store last, grabbed a bottle of water and a protein bar. As I waited in line, I caught a glimpse of the three of them outside. Dad by the pump, Savannah checking her phone, Barbara fixing her lipstick in the side mirror. I watched as they climbed back into the car. Something about the way the doors closed, so quick, so final, made my stomach twist. By the time I stepped outside, the SUV was pulling away. At first, I thought they were circling the lot. Maybe Dad had pulled around back for parking. Maybe Barbara needed to grab something from the trunk. Maybe. But the SUV never came back. I stood there, blinking against the morning glare, holding a half-melted protein bar like it was going to give me answers. The wind kicked up a loose napkin that spiraled toward the road. A kid chased after it, laughing. Me. I just stood there. Alone. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. No notifications. I called Dad's number. It rang 5 times, then voicemail. I tried Savannah. Straight to voicemail. Barbara. Blocked. I felt my pulse spike. The air turned heavier, hotter. I looked around the gas station like maybe someone had seen what happened. Like maybe this was all just a misunderstanding and they'd be back in a minute, joking about how I took too long and we were running behind schedule. But 5 minutes passed. Then 10. And the only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the crunch of gravel under strangers' tires. After 15 minutes of staring down the empty stretch of road like it owed me an apology, I finally sank onto the curb beside the vending machine. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I was too busy trying to convince myself this wasn't real. That they'd come back, maybe with coffee or snacks or some half-hearted excuse. But deep down I already knew. This wasn't an accident. They had left me. On purpose. I pulled up the family group chat. The one Dad insisted on using for every birthday, barbecue and passive-aggressive holiday greeting. It had been quiet all week. I typed a message. Hey, did you forget me? Delivered. Read by Savannah. No reply. A few seconds later, the message disappeared. She had left the group chat. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't a mistake. This was exile. They didn't want me at the wedding. They just didn't have the guts to tell me. So they let me climb into the car, breathe the same air, pretend, for a moment, that I still belonged. Then they dumped me like unwanted luggage at a gas station in Southern Oregon. And I laughed. A sharp, broken sound that startled the couple filling up their Prius across the lot. I laughed because it was easier than screaming. Easier than admitting how much it hurt. Then I stood up, brushed the dust off my jeans and walked back into the store. I asked the clerk if there was a bus station nearby. He looked at me like I'd just asked for a ride to the moon. You're in the middle of nowhere, sweetheart, he said. You might want to call someone. Someone. That word echoed. Who? There was no one left. No, that wasn't an option. But my fingers were already moving, searching through old texts. And there was Ethan Walker. Savannah's fiancé. The last person I should be calling. But also, the only one who had ever looked at me like I wasn't a burden. The phone rang twice before I nearly hung up. What was I doing? Calling my sister's fiancé from a gas station in the middle of nowhere? I didn't even know if they were together right now. He could be standing next to her. Or worse, he could be just like them. I was about to end the call when I heard his voice. Alyssa. There was a beat of silence. I hadn't said a word. My breath caught in my throat like it wasn't ready to be heard. Is everything okay? Ethan asked. His tone shifted, less surprised, more concerned. I swallowed. They left me, I said. My voice cracked around the edges. At a gas station. I think it was on purpose. Another pause. Then firmly. Where are you? I gave him the cross streets, the name of the town, if you could call it that, and the sad excuse for a gas station I was standing next to. I'm coming, he said without hesitation. You don't have to. I'll be there in 2 hours. Ethan showed up in a dusty blue sedan 2 hours and 17 minutes later. I counted. I sat on the bench outside the mini-mart, legs crossed, hands in my lap like I was waiting for a ride to summer camp. Except I was 34, abandoned and emotionally bleeding out. The moment I saw him step out of the car, I stood too fast. My knees almost buckled. He looked different. Older than I remembered. A little tired. Hair longer. Shirt wrinkled. But his eyes, those damn eyes, were the same. Still kind. Still steady. still searching for something more than just what's on the surface. He walked up slowly like he didn't want to spook me. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked, and something inside me cracked. Not the part that cried when Leo died. Not the part that shut down when my family turned their backs. No, this was something else. The part of me that still believed someone might show up and stay. We didn't speak much on the ride. I told him what happened in fragments, how they left, how they blocked me, how Savannah exited the group chat like she was deleting spam. Ethan didn't interrupt. He just drove, hands steady on the wheel, jaw clenched in quiet anger. When we hit a stretch of road lined with evergreens and shadow, he finally said something. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "You don't have to be. It's not your mess." "It kind of is," he said softly. I turned to look at him. He didn't elaborate. Not yet. But that sentence hung between us like fog we'd eventually have to drive through. We stopped at a roadside diner sometime after 5 p.m. The place had peeling red booths, a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 80s, and a waitress who looked like she'd seen every type of heartbreak under the sun. Ethan ordered us both grilled cheese and black coffee. I didn't argue. We sat across from each other in a booth by the window. Outside, the light was starting to dim. Golden hour. Leo used to call it the painting light. "Do you remember," I said suddenly, "the grief group?" Ethan's eyes met mine. And there was recognition. And something like guilt. "Yeah," he said. "Of course I do. You sat 2 chairs down from me. You brought donuts once. Apple cider. No one ate them." "I did," I said quietly. "I was starving." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You were the only one who spoke in full sentences. You were the only one who didn't look away when I said his name." "Leo." He didn't flinch. "You said his favorite color was yellow," Ethan recalled. "That he used to line up his toy trucks by size and color before bed. That he liked books about space. He wanted to be an astronaut. Said he'd take me to the moon with him." There was a silence that stretched between us, thick with memory. Then Ethan said something that made my skin prickle. "I remember what you didn't say too." I looked up. "You never once asked who was driving the car." I froze. Ethan didn't press. He just waited. I hadn't asked because I had been too scared of the answer. Too scared that if I pulled the thread, everything else would unravel. We got back in the car just as the sky started bruising purple. The air had cooled, but something heavier lingered. Something that sat between us like an unopened envelope neither of us wanted to claim. I stared out the window, watching trees blur past. My reflection in the glass looked tired. Older than I remembered being. "Ethan," I said, not looking at him, "why did you say it's your mess too?" He was quiet for a long beat. Then, "Because I knew something, and I didn't say anything." That pulled my eyes away from the window. "What did you know?" He gripped the wheel tighter. "A few months after Leo died, I was helping a friend install security cameras for his bakery near your old street. The one with the blue awning?" He nodded. "We checked the feed and there was old footage saved from a week before. Most had auto-deleted, but one file remained, probably corrupted and skipped by the system. And I saw a car hit something, or someone, and keep driving. It was dark, but I could tell it was a kid." I stopped breathing. "You saw Leo?" "I didn't know it was him." "Not then." Ethan's voice grew quieter. "But what I could see, the car wasn't random. It was familiar. It belonged to someone Savannah used to hang out with. A guy named Brandon, always showing off, always drunk at parties." I stared at him. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" His jaw clenched. "I did. I told Savannah." "You told Savannah?" I repeated, my voice brittle. "And what did she say?" Ethan exhaled through his nose like he was trying to steady himself before walking into fire. "She told me to delete the file. That it was probably nothing. That the police had already closed the case. She said bringing it up would only hurt you more." "Hurt me?" I scoffed. "She thought hiding the truth would protect me?" "No," he said. "She thought it would protect her." And there was the silence behind every awkward holiday card. The reason no one ever said Leo's name again. The reason they looked at me like I was a crack in the porcelain. Savannah had known. Maybe not everything, but something. And instead of coming to me, she chose to bury it. "Leo." "I kept the file," Ethan said. "On a flash drive. But a week later, when I went back to get another copy from the bakery system, it was gone. The owner said a woman came by, said she was from the family legal team. Friendly. Well-dressed. Blonde. Barbara. Of course. That drive, I said, voice shaking. Do you still have it? Ethan hesitated. It's corrupted. It won't play. But that didn't matter. Because what mattered was that they tried to erase it. And erasing something only proves it was real. We pulled over at a scenic overlook somewhere outside Reading. Mountains in the distance, wrapped in fading light. Below us, the river twisted like a buried memory, refusing to run straight. I stepped out of the car. I needed air. I needed space. I needed not to scream. Ethan stayed inside, watching me through the windshield, like he wasn't sure if I wanted to be followed. I didn't. My hands trembled as I gripped the metal railing, staring at the distant hills. I thought about the day Leo was born. How he came out wailing, fists clenched like he was ready to fight the world. How his tiny body melted against my chest when they placed him there, and I whispered, "I've got you. You're safe." But he wasn't. I couldn't keep him safe. And worse, the people who were supposed to protect me, my own family, they hadn't just failed. They had betrayed us both. They let me bury my son without the truth. Without justice. Without even a goddamn explanation. I felt something shift inside me. Something small but sharp, like a bone popping back into place after years of dislocation. "I'm done being quiet," I said, not realizing I'd spoken aloud. Ethan stepped out of the car. "What?" I turned to him. "I'm not going to let them rewrite this story. Not again." He nodded slowly. "Then we start with what we do have." I looked back at the darkening sky, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. We arrived at the vineyard just before dusk. The whole place looked like it had been ripped from a bridal magazine. White canopies, string lights, polished wine barrels turned into cocktail tables. Guests in pastel linen milled about, holding champagne flutes like fragile status symbols. I stood outside the gates for a moment, watching the blur of elegance and rehearsed laughter. "You don't have to go in," Ethan said beside me. "I do," I replied, voice steady. "But I'm not going to pretend I'm here to celebrate." He didn't argue. He just held the gate open. As we stepped through the archway, I felt it, the shift in air. Eyes turned. Conversations slowed. The music hiccuped as if the speakers themselves sensed the drama walking in. Then I saw him. Tom Carter. My father. Standing near the head table, drink in hand, shoulders stiff like he'd been bracing for this moment ever since the gas station. Our eyes locked. He didn't look surprised. He found me on the stone path behind the vineyard, away from the crowd, where the air was still and smelled faintly of lavender and crushed grapes. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. I turned, arms crossed. "And you shouldn't have left me at a gas station like some stray dog. But here we are." He sighed, took a sip of his drink, then set the glass down on the stone ledge like it suddenly tasted bitter. "It wasn't my idea. But you let it happen." Silence. "You always let things happen, Dad. When Barbara shut me out, when Savannah paraded around like she was an only child, when Leo died." My voice cracked. "You stood in the back at the funeral like you didn't know how to mourn him. Like he was a problem we had to bury." "He wasn't my problem," he said too fast. The air snapped. I stared at him. His shoulders dropped. "That's not what I meant." "Then say what you meant," I said, stepping closer. "For once in your life, tell the truth." He didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out something small, worn and red. A faded envelope. He held it out but didn't meet my eyes. "You should have had this a long time ago." I stared at the envelope. It was soft at the edges, like it had been handled too many times. My name was scribbled in the corner in faint blue ink. I recognized the handwriting. Mom's. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of official letterhead from the local precinct. I read it once. Then again. It was a witness statement. Dated 3 days after Leo's death. From a neighbor who had been walking her dog near the intersection where it happened. She'd seen a dark-colored car. Said it swerved after hitting something. Said the driver panicked and sped off. But what made my blood run cold was the last paragraph. The driver appeared to be male, early 20s, under the influence. The vehicle was registered to a Brandon Ellis, frequently seen at the Carter residence with Savannah Carter. Underlined in pen. Witness withdrew statement on day 5. No follow-up pursued. My fingers went numb. You knew, I whispered. Dad didn't respond. You knew it was someone Savannah brought around. Someone she vouched for. And you said nothing. It wasn't that simple. Yes, it was. I shouted. You chose silence. You chose them. We didn't want to lose both of you, he said, voice barely audible. Barbara thought, if this got out it would ruin the family. You were afraid of ruining Savannah's wedding. I was planning my son's funeral. The wind picked up, rustling the grapevines behind us. My heart was breaking all over again, but not the way it had when Leo died. That time it broke from loss. This time, it was betrayal. That night I didn't sleep. After the confrontation with my father, I told Ethan I needed to be alone. He didn't argue. He just handed me the keys to his rental and said, I'll be here when you're ready. I drove to my father's house. Not the vineyard. Not the venue. The house I grew up in. It was empty. Everyone was at the resort, still pretending to celebrate. The air inside smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. I walked through the hallway slowly, like every step was peeling back a layer of memory. The door to my old room creaked open. Same peeling paint. Same warped floorboard near the window. Same cheap hollow-core closet door. But Leo's room, the one across the hall, that's where my body moved on its own. The walls had been repainted. Neutral tones. Savannah always hated the bright stars Leo and I had painted together. But his bookshelf was still there. Half filled. On the top shelf, tucked behind a stack of faded Dr. Seuss books, was a small beat-up plastic toy box. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I gave him on his 5th birthday. Shaped like a treasure chest. He used to call it his space safe. Said it was where astronauts kept their secrets. I opened it. Inside, a tiny pair of socks, a crayon drawing of the moon, and his old Buzz Lightyear talking watch. The kind with a voice recorder. I pressed the button. It whirred to life, static first. Then, hi mommy. I froze. It's me, Leo. I'm 6 now. If you're sad, I'm gonna hug you big. Don't be scared, okay? I love you more than the moon. More than all the planets. A click. Then silence. I dropped to the floor. Not out of grief. Out of something deeper. Something heavier. A collapse that came from years of swallowing silence and forcing breath into lungs too tired to carry the weight. The watch slipped from my fingers and rolled under the dresser, but I didn't move to grab it. I just sat there. Back against the wall. Knees pulled tight to my chest. Eyes brimming with tears that refused to fall. Like even my sadness had grown cautious over the years. His voice. So clear. So certain. So Leo. And somehow through time and plastic and static he knew. He knew there'd come a day when I'd need to hear it. When I'd feel like the world had closed in around me and the only thing left was the quiet ache of being forgotten. If you're sad, I'm gonna hug you big. God, I could feel his arms. Tiny. Warm. Always around my neck like a scarf of sunlight. More than all the planets. I let the tears fall then. But not from weakness. From resolve. Because in that moment, in the stillness of that room, I realized something. This wasn't about Savannah. Or Barbara. Or even my father. This was about Leo. And Leo deserved more than a forgotten file, a buried envelope, and a mother who gave up before the truth had a chance to breathe. I wiped my face, stood slowly, and walked to the closet. I pulled out a small duffel bag from the top shelf, the one that still had his name stitched in yellow thread. I packed it with what mattered. The watch. The crayon drawing. The youth. Tomorrow I was going back to the vineyard. Not as a guest. Not as a sister. Not even as a daughter. But as a mother. And a storm was coming with me. I stepped onto the aisle like it was a battlefield. Every heel clicking on stone. Every gaze tightening like a noose. Every breath shallow, like the air itself wasn't sure it was welcome here. I passed row after row of family friends, business associates, extended relatives I hadn't seen since my mother's funeral. No one said a word. No one blinked. Until I reached the front. I turned to the crowd. My voice didn't shake. I know this is supposed to be a celebration. But something has been buried to make this day possible. I opened the duffel bag. One by one I laid them on the altar. A folded police statement with my name in the margins. A faded crayon drawing of the moon, signed in shaky handwriting. Leo, age 6. And finally, a small Buzz Lightyear watch, still holding the last words of a child no one wanted to remember. The whispers started immediately. Is that her? Is that the sister? Wasn't there something with her kid? I looked at Savannah. She was frozen. Mascara too perfect. Veil too white. This, I said, tapping the paper, is a witness statement that was buried. This, I said, holding up the watch, is what my son left behind before someone he trusted ran him down and never looked back. And this, I said, voice breaking just once, is what I carry every day while the rest of you sip champagne and pretend we're whole. Savannah took a step forward, lips parted like she might say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe a denial. But all she managed was a whisper. Alyssa, don't do this. I tilted my head. Don't do what? Tell the truth? Bury my son with dignity? Remind you that his life mattered. The silence was suffocating now. You could hear birds in the vineyard. A cork popping in the distance. A child somewhere asking his mother, "Who's Leo?" Then I turned to Ethan. He hadn't moved. His hands still folded. His shoulders still set. But his eyes, they were on me. Not in shock. Not in judgment. In understanding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. The one Savannah had picked. The one her mother helped size. The one that had no place in the future anymore. He looked at Savannah, voice calm. I loved who I thought you were. Then he set the ring on the table. Gently. Like it was glass. Like it was the last fragile piece of a lie that no longer held weight. But I can't marry someone who buries the truth to protect their image. Savannah gasped. Her mother, Barbara, stood up, hissing his name like a curse. But Ethan just turned and walked toward me. You ready? He asked softly. I nodded. And together we walked out. No screaming. No chaos. Just the quiet aftermath of a perfect day undone by the truth. It's been 11 months. The vineyard wedding never made it to the photo albums. Savannah left for Spain to find clarity. Barbara hasn't reached out. Tom sends letters. Never texts, never emails. Always handwritten. Like he thinks pen and paper can rewind time. I read them. Sometimes. I haven't written back. I live in Portland now. It's quieter here. Rainier. I found a little studio near the park. One with high windows, paint-chipped floors, and enough sunlight in the morning to make it feel like hope. I turned it into something new. Something Leo would have loved. It's called Leo's Corner. An art space for kids who've lost someone. We don't call it therapy, but that's what it is. Crayons and grief. Glitter and memories. We talk through clay and paint in silence. Every Friday I read stories about space. Sometimes I tell them about a boy who once wanted to be an astronaut. A boy who believed he could take his mom to the moon if she ever felt too sad to stay here. One afternoon, a boy with shaggy brown hair and 2 big sneakers wandered into the studio. Couldn't have been more than 7. He walked straight to the back wall, where Leo's painting still hangs. The moon, painted in childlike strokes, surrounded by stars that look like golden fingerprints. He studied it for a while, then turned to me. Who made that? He asked. A boy named Leo, I replied. He was really into space. The kid squinted. Is he still around? I smiled. In here. I tapped my chest. Always. He nodded like he understood. Like kids often do before the world teaches them not to. I think I want to paint Saturn, he said, grabbing a brush. I watched him mix purple and orange, tongue poking out in concentration. And for a moment the ache in my chest softened. Not gone. Just softer. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain never lived here. It just means you stop letting it take the whole house. I sat down beside him, dipped my brush into yellow and began to paint a little sun. Something small. Something warm. Something that said, we're still here. Even when they try to bury us.